Okay, so I'm normally not a build YouTuber of any sorts. That's usually not stuff that I dabble into just because I think that there's plenty of other channels on YouTube that cover that kind of stuff. But I feel really inclined to show this build that I've been working on and been playing with for the past few days, just because I genuinely think it's really slept on right now. It has to do with the new Warlock chest armor. I Mataiodoxia. I probably butchered that completely. Basically, if you don't know what this exotic does, it does a few things. So your targets damaged by your Arcane Needle are going to emit a suspending burst when killed. And this is rather if your Arcane Needle is the last thing to damage them, first thing to damage them. Doesn't matter. As long as they're affected by Arcane Needle, there will be a suspending burst that happens. It's a kind of underwhelming suspending burst. But if you're able to apply 3 needles on one target, then you have a larger, more powerful detonation. The main part of this exotic that makes it really good on this specific build is actually going to be the melee energy that it gives you for defeating suspended targets, and then they also pierce barrier champions. So normally I was actually running this on prismatic. Now granted, I do not have many prismatic fragments unlocked at all, so you know, this whole loadout and stuff is more of a work in progress. It's more of a blueprint of stuff. This exotic was kind of not great. It's kind of mid on prismatic, at least right now with the fragments I have. And while the suspend is really cool on Arcane Needle, obviously Arcane Needle is really good, really good melee ability. Having constant unravel is just great, but getting that melee uptime is a little bit more tricky on prismatic because that is your only source of suspend, and you're gaining more melee energy from defeating suspended targets. The suspend burst from the Arcane Needle melee ability isn't really that great, and it's not really going to be happening that often. So what I decided to do instead is actually swap back to strand, and I used to run strand lock on a similar build to do with thorn and necrotic grips, and these were really good. You had your thorn and your poison AoE going off with the Arcane Needle severing everything around. But one thing that kind of sucked about that build is I didn't really get as much melee regen as I would have liked to. With this chest armor, defeating suspended targets grants melee energy. That is the main thing that I'm taking advantage of. So as you can probably assume, I'm going to be pairing this with Mindspun Invocation. So basically I'm going to consume my Shackle grenade, and everything I kill is going to emit in a suspending burst. So everything around that target I just killed is going to get suspended. And defeating those suspended targets are obviously going to be giving me more melee energy. Now, a really underrated fragment that I was using for this is actually Thread of Isolation. Landing rapid precision hits emits a severing burst from the target. Now, I'm pairing this with Outbreak Perfected. This weapon is phenomenal. Pulse Rifles got a buff this season. They're doing really great damage. Unfortunately, this thing isn't going to be doing as much damage against bosses anymore since kinetic weapons no longer have that damage increase against specifically bosses, but this weapon is phenomenal. I'm usually not much of a dad rifle user. The nanites are incredibly good. I have it crafted with rapid hit for a good all-around pulse. And yeah, basically the whole point of this build is I'm able to suspend. I have 4 different ways I can technically suspend targets. It's a lot of suspending, and I'm basically spamming my Arcane Needles and getting a bunch of unravel, pairing that with Outbreak and getting a bunch of nanites, so it's just constant red and green. It just looks like Christmas lights just going everywhere. Targets are being suspended. I'm getting grenade melee energy back, and overall it's just a really safe build to use in harder content, even endgame content. Outbreak is great against champs alone. Like, this weapon, honestly, it's so versatile. It does really good ad clear, especially with this loadout that I have going on here, and it also still does really good single target damage for a primary. Another thing I have on here is the Wanderer. Basically, a Tangle I Destroy is going to create a suspending burst. That suspending burst is really nice because when I don't have my Shackle grenade uptime, when I don't have Weaver's Trance activated, this serves as a really nice backup. Because now, since I'm applying Sever to a target's literally just from a few precision bursts, I'm going to be applying Sever. They're going to be strand debuffed, so it's going to spawn a Threadling So then I can rather pick up or shoot that threadling and then suspend everything else around it, defeating those suspended targets, giving me more melee energy. Spawning that threadling and damaging targets with it is also going to be giving me more melee energy. Since I'm severing a bunch of targets from hitting easy precision crits with Outbreak Perfected, severing a bunch of things, creating tangles left, right, and center. The only downside is obviously going to be the tangle cooldown, but I'm going to be creating a bunch of tangles, allowing me to suspend more targets, and damaging targets with these tangles is going to give me even more melee energy on top of that. Also have this paired with Thread of Generation, dealing damage generates grenade energy. And yeah, I know it's not prismatic, but genuinely, you will be so surprised because I'm just able to suspend so many targets, especially with Weaver's Trance. I'm just able to have so much more uptime on my Arcane Needle. I only have tier 2 strength, which, like I said, it's a work in progress. More strength would probably be more optimal, but even with tier 2 strength, I'm still able to sometimes spam my Arcane Needle and just get constant unravel, even more suspending. Like, I'm able to suspend in 4 different ways. I'm able to suspend from throwing my Shackle Grenade, consuming my Shackle Grenade for Weaver's Trance, shooting my Tangle or throwing my Tangle, and also getting a kill with my Arcane Needle thanks to the exotic. So that's 4 different ways that I can suspend targets. Basically, the whole sort of gameplay loop, it's quite a simple loadout, but consuming my Shackle Grenade most of the time, then throwing in an Arcane Needle to get Unravel, shooting things with my Outbreak, getting a bunch of nanites procced. Now I have a bunch of unraveling rounds just everywhere, things dying and suspending detonations. I'm getting those melee charges back. So armor mods are not final. I'm still testing out a lot of stuff. So, you know, this is, like I said, I just feel inclined to share this because I want to provide like the blueprints for this loadout, because I feel like it's underrated and it's not being talked about right now because of how insane Prismatic is. Trust me, I know how insane it is, but I think this exotic is genuinely like really safe for endgame content paired with all the other stuff going on. So I'll just briefly show what I have for armor mods, which I just put on a heavy ammo finder, scout, kinetic siphon, momentum transfer, which I believe will work with the suspending detonation from your Shackle Grenade, giving me more melee energy. I should probably slap on, if I had more energy, I would probably have slapped on causing damage with your powered melee attack, reduce your grenade cooldown for more of that loop. I just put triple resist here on my chest armor. Picking up orbs, I got better already, and recuperation for giving me some instant health and health reg, really good for survivability paired with woven mail. And then I just put on 1 kinetic weapon surge just to make Outbreak even more lethal. I have bomber as well, which will just give me a little bit more grenade energy when I cast my rift. Distribution, which is nice in a pinch for getting more of that ability energy in general, and then also it's going to collect those orbs. So casting my rift is fairly important. That's also why I have high recovery. I also want to mention 2 downsides of this build. 1, close quarters sometimes isn't optimal because I have Outbreak Perfected on. It's a great weapon, but when enemies are all in your face, it's a little bit awkward sometimes. Sometimes you can get away with it, especially with your Arcane Needle, if you're able to pop one, you know, kind of pop down a rift, and since you have distribution on and you're surrounded by enemies, hopefully it's going to help you get some melee energy back. Honestly, you could swap out a bomber for outreach instead, get some of your melee energy back, lob an Arcane Needle, and then that cause unravel rounds and suspend, so you can kind of, you know, take your time and then kill those suspended enemies, and then you can pick up your tangle and then throw it and suspend more enemies. So it's still like okay in close quarters. As you'll see in some of the gameplay here, there are really a lot of instances where, you know, it'd be more optimal if I just kept my distance and played a little bit safer. I haven't even touched upon, I'm just using Cartesian and an Apex Predator just for general gameplay, but you know, you could definitely run something that's a little bit better at close range. For example, this shotgun that I really want to make a video on, that could definitely help you in a pinch if you're getting surrounded by enemies. Second downside of this build, I will say, is the fragments are goated, but it's absolutely dogging on my stats right now. I already have just the Mataiodoxia, I'm butchering that. I already have this just from the campaign, so the stats on it aren't great. On top of that, the fragments here, minus 10 strength, minus 10 discipline, minus 10 resilience, and this isn't doing anything for me in terms of stats. So, you know, if you are someone that likes stats, you know, this is kind of gonna dog on your stats a little bit too, which is the other downside of this build. But other than that, yeah, super safe. You can keep your distance, provide really good chunk damage with Outbreak, really great safe ad clear with your nanites, your unravel rounds, spamming your arcane needle, suspending a bunch of targets from various different ways. I mean, Strand, you still have a fantastic burst damage super. You have damage reduction with Woven Mail. Like, it's a really, really solid loadout in my opinion, and it's something I've been using for the past few days, and I just felt really inclined to share this. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I'm normally not a build YouTuber, but I'm gonna be honest, I really just felt inclined to share this because I really think this is being overlooked right now, and I think it's a really solid loadout.